Defense is hard, very hard. With the introduction of the drive gauge as well as the character design in Street Fighter 6, offense has never been stronger in the franchise, and so it's never been more essential to have a strong, well-rounded and solid defense to fall back on. Defense is all about understanding your opponent and risk management. Knowing your defensive options and choosing the correct ones based on your opponent's habits is what creates a defense that tilts your opponent and frustrates them, which we can then ultimately exploit with our offense. This video will cover your defensive options, what they do and when to use them, some advanced defensive techniques, as well as everything in between. I'll also talk about what I hold to be the true secret to strong defense and how you can begin applying it immediately. This video is the third in an all-rounder series about Street Fighter 6, and while watching the previous ones isn't mandatory, this video will build upon them. So if there are concepts in this video you'd like to explore further, I recommend watching the previous videos. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, liking and subscribing helps me continue making these, and without further ado, let's start with talking about why blocking actually works. If you're watching this, you probably know how to play fighting games. And if you know how to play fighting games, you probably remember your first experience playing them. The most common question from someone hopping into a fighting game for the first time is, how do I block? But we don't talk about why you block enough. So you don't get hit, of course, may seem like the obvious answer, but without understanding the intricate nuance as to why blocking is actually good, we won't be able to move on. Offense costs resources. Every time your opponent is pressuring you, they're utilizing one of their many resources to try and open you up. Now obviously we have very direct resources like our drive gauge and super gauge, however one resource we don't really think about much is spacing. Attacking a blocking opponent pushes you back. If it didn't, the first person to land a plus on block move would just win the game. These attacks that our opponent uses to try and damage us or open us up all come at the cost of their positioning. They're sacrificing being close to us to hit us. But you'll notice if we block enough, they'll simply be too far away to do anything else. They've run out of spacing. The only way to gain spacing is through either walking, jumping, using slow but forward advancing moves, and etc. You'll notice here, every one of these options have something in common. You cannot perform them while blocking, and so against each of these approaches, our opponent leaves themselves vulnerable and in a state where, when we're ready, we can beat them to the punch and start our own offense. It's this fundamental idea of pressure costing positioning and taking space inherently holding risk that lets blocking work. Your opponent cannot continue their offense without risking something, and so successfully defending against our opponent drives their offense to a screeching halt. This is what blocking means, what strong defense means, and as you can imagine, without it, our opponent would berate us indefinitely. You might be eager to get into the fun stuff like utilizing defensive options and the aforementioned secret to great defense, but first we need to talk about what defense actually is. It seems pointless to explain, but it's important to declare a definition so we can articulate our defensive strategy better, and it all starts with the two game states where we need to be on the defensive. The first is in neutral. It's easy to overlook defense in neutral, but you should know that the best way to be a great defensive player is to stop your opponent putting you in situations where you need to defend, which all begins in neutral. Aside from playing and winning the neutral game, you need to be on the lookout for your opponent's approaches. Like we explained earlier, your opponent wants to take space to exert pressure, so they'll use neutral skips like jumps, drive rushes, dashes, and everything else to get in, get a knockdown, and force you on defense. Here, the mental stack is incredibly important, and I'll be talking about it more in a later video. Regardless, for now I'm going to stress the importance of winning neutral. After all, the best defense is simply not needing to defend. The second state is against our opponent's Oki. When we're knocked down and on the defensive, that's when we get to the real grit of it, and it's this state which most players refer to when they say they need to work on their defense. In this state, we're ultimately forced to guess between strike, throw, and we can optimize our odds here by selecting the correct defensive options, which brings us to chapter 2. There are many defensive options in this game, and each one has a different use. To simplify things, we'll split them into 3 groups with minor exceptions, those being defensive options that beat strike, defensive options that beat throw, and defensive options that beat block. I'm going to go through each category and go through each defensive option / technique and discuss their importance and purpose. So let's begin. Defensive options against strike. The first defensive option is probably a bit silly to cover, but is the most important of them all, and that is block. Block is, obviously, the default option you should always fall back on. Blocking carries the lowest risk of all the defensive options, and in situations where you may be flustered and not sure what to do, blocking is the way to go. We've already covered how blocking works, so we'll just move on to the next. Parry is similar to block. It effectively is a block button, though it comes with the benefits of reducing drive gauge drainage, and a perfect parry can swing the game in your favor. more on this later. However, this higher reward comes with higher risk, the risk of course being throw. While block loses the throw, it's inevitable we take a few throws this way. However, a punish counter throw from a failed parry not only drains your drive gauge but does significantly more damage. Parry is suitable for situations where you're not under immediate threat of a throw, or you have a read that your opponent will be going for block strings and frame traps. In situations where the threat of strike and throw are both equally prevalent, only attempt to parry when you have a read your opponent will not throw you. Defensive options against throw. Moving on to the next layer of offense, we come to throw. Throw has a few options to beat it, and they come with varying degrees of risk, the first being to simply throw tech. Throw tech comes with the best reward. You beat the throw without losing any positioning, you take no damage, and you reset back to neutral. Obviously, however, this comes with big risk, and that is it loses heavily to shimmy. Throw teching, specifically in this game, is very risky. One shimmy will cost you the game sometimes, and so it's important to weigh the risk-reward of this option when you play. Generally, throw teching in mid-screen isn't completely advisable. If you have a read, go for it, though usually your opponent doesn't get the best Oki from a mid-screen throw, and doesn't get much damage either, so when the other option is being shimmied, it can be in your favour to take a few throws here. In the corner however, with my dearly beloved throw loops, needing to tech is much more important, and we'll come back to the topic of when to tech in a later chapter. Backdashing is strong, and if you aren't using it already, you should. A backdash gets you out of a throw and can sometimes even leave you plus enough for a punish. Furthermore, players trying to shimmy will either whiff their shimmy punish or won't react to your whiff throw, since it doesn't exist. Similarly, jumping is also a strong tool, however is much riskier. A ready opponent can and will anti-air you, and best case scenario, that's all they do. Mid-screen, jumping backwards is strong, and while it costs you a lot of positioning, it gets you out of the mix, and even a ready opponent won't really be able to punish this. Jumping forward in the corner is strong too. Even if you get anti-aired, it gets you out of the corner and gets you back into the game, so it's important to include it in your repertoire of defensive options. Defensive options against block. Before we talk about defensive options that beat your opponent blocking, why will your opponent be blocking in the first place? Your opponent will block on their own Oki to bait out a few options. They're hoping you whiff a reversal, leaving you open to a punish, or you panic and throw tech, leaving you open to be shimmied. This is one of the later levels of offense and usually comes after you've established a fear of reversals and other defensive options. Your opponent blocking can be easily abused though. They're sacrificing their Oki, and if you see it coming, you'll be able to steal your turn back with ease. The first option to beat block is wake up mash. Mashing on wake up simply refers to waking up with a jab with the reversal timing. Mashing allows you to go into a jab string and take your turn back. You can cancel into specials, maybe just use a few jabs and then disengage, or drive rush cancel to give yourself a 50-50. Ultimately, waking up with jab is a strong option that beats opponents blocking on their Oki, and it lets you go into anything afterwards. You should use these whenever you feel your opponent is hesitant on their Oki or they suspect you'll throw out a reversal. This is incredibly strong against opponents who don't really know their Oki and try and drive rush forward only to get hit by your jabs. Another strong option on similar lines is wake up low. Wake up low is a big read, and when correct, allows you to punish your opponent for walking back, which they might be doing to block a reversal or again go for a shimmy. You can commit to drive rush here too, for either pressure or a combo, or simply just low into special, or even nothing. Regardless, wake up low will catch your opponent trying to walk back and can immensely swing the momentum of the match in your favor, and when your opponent is trying to shimmy you, these will be a guaranteed hit. Now, what's talking about defensive options without talking about reversals? Reversals, whether they be ODDPs or a drive reversal, let you completely ignore whatever your opponent's trying to do and blow right through. Reversals beat two of your opponent's three Oki options, those two being strike and throw. This high reward, however, comes with a high risk. A blocked reversal can lose you the round, if not at least put you in a situation to lose. Against some high damage characters, you need to be careful with your reversals and only use them when you're confident. Knowing when your reversals will hit is a skill honed over many games of practice, and you'll get better with it with time. My blanket advice for now would be to simply trust your gut, apart from when your gut is obvious. I've left this intentionally vague, however, as when to reversal is more of a concept to be covered in a future video about the psychology behind Street Fighter 6. These defensive techniques are good and all, however to truly reach the top, you need to unlock your full defensive potential by employing some of these more advanced techniques. We've talked about parry defensively, but sometimes the best defense is great offense, and it's important to talk about using perfect parry offensively. Perfect parry can be used during your opponent's pressure to catch them being predictable and punish them for it. It lets you swing the momentum of the game drastically and can be round defining. It's strong because not only does it destroy your opponent's drive gauge and let you go for either a side switch throw or a combo, but it also does a bit of psychological damage. It says to your opponent, I want to you, and if they don't adapt, they'll die. Obviously, getting a perfect parry can be difficult, so without diving too much much into the topic, I'll give you some sound advice. Most characters use frame traps as block pressure to catch you mashing, and they use them a lot. Whether you're blocking or even getting hit, you can practice tapping parry to the rhythm of your opponent's attacks. Whether you land a parry or not, you'll build the muscle memory for the future, and when you find yourself in the same situation, you'll be more than likely to score a perfect parry. This works because most characters' block strings are very similar to their combos, though be careful, as this does come with the risk of players who are smart and quick to adapt. They will catch on to obsessive parrying and stop their pressure short to throw you, so be wary. The next advanced defensive technique to talk about is the delay tech. Delay tech is an option select you can employ right now to strengthen your defense and help keep it solid. The option select replaces regular teching in favor for teching just a few frames later than you would. This option select allows you to beat meaty attacks and meaty throws simultaneously, while also not losing to anything a normal throw wouldn't already lose to. It works by abusing the fact that throws have 9 frames to be broken, and we can use this to first block incoming attacks and then tech a throw if our opponent decides to throw it. Done correctly, the throw won't come out on a blocked meaty, but will tech a throw on a meaty throw, thus giving you the option select. Delay techs are pivotal to your defense, and you should use them every time you would normally tech. Most players can rank up today if they simply begin using them. The last advanced defensive technique we're going to talk about doesn't have a set in stone name, at least I don't think so we're just going to call it Drive Rush OS. Drive Rush OS is usable by any character, however it excels on characters with a fast OD reversal, and while it can also be utilized with super, performing this OS with a reversal lets it be more practical and accessible. This OS is done by inputting a reversal as soon as your opponent drive rush cancels a move. If after the drive rush cancel your opponent leaves a gap, your reversal will come out and blow right through them. This option select is incredibly strong. It allows you to deny your opponent's pressure from their drive rush cancel and leaves you positive in the drive gauge war. Better yet, your reversal only comes out when your opponent leaves a gap, so aside from certain seldom setups that allow your opponent to bait these, this OS is safe. You should use this when you know your opponent is going to drive rush cancel for pressure, and better players can simply use this OS whenever they see a drive rush cancel in neutral. As long as you have the gauge to avoid burnout, or are just prepared for it, you can autopilot this OS, obviously still being aware that some characters have tricky setups to bait these. These tools, techniques, and tricks are good and all, and I've spoken about when to use each one, however it's important to talk specifically about when you should throw tech. The phrase "take the throw" is at this point almost synonymous with Street Fighter as a franchise, and while it's obvious what it literally means, it's important to understand the actual meaning of it and why we say it. In Street Fighter 6, the standard HP is 10,000, bar some exceptions. We can compare this to the damage of a throw, which is 1,200 for a non-command grab across the board. Simple math says we can take 9 throws from full HP before we die. If we compare this to a standard shimmy punish counter combo, we can take anywhere from 2 times to 5 times this amount of damage. For example's sake, let's say a shimmy punish will deal 5,000. This number isn't exactly accurate, but it'll serve as a good demonstration. With this number, we can take at most 2 shimmies before we die. When we compare these, taking 9 throws versus taking 2 shimmies, we can start to get why throw teching can be so dangerous and why we say take the throw. Shimmies not only brutalize your health bar, but also damage your drive gauge, put you in a worse screen position, and often subject you to your opponent's Oki. Unless you're a bad gambler, it doesn't make sense for us to throw tech in every situation where throws threaten. The odds are simply not in our favor. To beat throws, we have jumps, backdashes, and techs. Throw teching should be exclusively reserved for hard callouts, where you know plain as day your opponent will throw you. Otherwise, you should utilize your other options. Backdashes are the best non-teching option. They allow you to escape a throw, and some characters can even fire back with a punish. You should use these often, as opposed to jumping, which either gives up a lot of space with a back jump or subjects you to an anti-air with a neutral jump. Forward jumping out the corner is the exception, however, as although you'll eat an anti-air, it's a small price to pay to get out of a potential throw loop. All of these should come below simply taking the throw. If you don't take a few throws, you won't be able to get a read on your opponent, which means you'll have a harder time guessing correctly later. There's a lot to be said about the psychology of throwing and teching, and I'll cover this all in a later video, but even without that, you need to understand that the odds are in your favor to simply take a few throws. Vary your options when you decide to guess against the throw, and at the very least, you won't get shimmied relentlessly. Obviously, don't sit there and take every throw with no thought. However, when it comes to taking 9 throws versus taking 2 shimmies, you need to remember the odds are not in your favor to always be throw teching. Ironically enough, however, sitting there and absent-mindedly taking throws actually brings us to the secret of strong defense. What is the secret to truly powerful defense? How do your favorite players never get opened up, and how can we do the same? The secret is simple. just block. You're probably thinking, that's it? And while it sounds cliche, simply being patient and willing to block is the secret. So let me explain. Patience is overpowered. In some matchups, whoever runs out of patience first loses. Lack of patience leads to taking questionable risks, getting frustrated and overextending, and making bad decisions. Just think about the last time you played a zoner. The reason patience is so strong is that your opponent can only do so much before they get impatient. They can hit you with a few block strings, maybe chip away with a fireball or two, but ultimately they will struggle to open you up. Most opponents won't expect you to take a bunch of throws. Being patient and forcing your opponent to start taking risks because they feel they need to open you up in other ways is the secret to godly defense. Even if it brings you down to an inch of your life, even if you take 8 throws in a row, if it means you can catch your opponent trying to shimmy you on the last throw and you win the round, it makes it all worth it. Humans are naturally awful at being random. We seek patterns where there are none, and this logic applies to fighting games too. Your opponent will try and find the logic to your defense. They can't help but throw you twice or 3 times and then try and shimmy you. They're looking for a pattern to your throw text that doesn't exist. And it's in these moments where you have them fooled, where they have to back off and need to reapproach riskily, that you can break your opponent, catch them off guard and win the game. You should use this logic as applicable. Play the life lead, take a few throws, be patient, and when your opponent cracks, you will be there ready. It's not as easy as that though. Being patient sucks if you can't even anti-air, so you need a strong defense in neutral to be able to execute this plan. Beating your opponent's approaches is a topic I cover briefly in my video about neutral, which I advise you to check out if you'd like to further your understanding. That's all I have for you guys in this video. I originally had extra chapters about optimizing your mental stack and when you should mash, reversal, jump, and etc. Though I decided those would fit better in the video about the psychology behind fighting games. So if you'd like to see that, make sure you let me know in the comments below. I really appreciate all the support I've been getting here on YouTube and over on Twitter, so thank you guys immensely. It means a lot and it helps me keep making these videos. If you enjoyed, don't forget to like and subscribe. But for now, that's all I have for you guys. Peace.